"Excuse me, you're sitting at my table." The woman, Bianca, didn't even turn her head. She waved her hand dismissively, like brushing away a fly. "This is VIP, sweetheart. I don't think you understand where you are." Her companion, Daniel, finally looked up. His eyes swept over the man from head to toe, lingering on the simple clothes, the unbranded watch, the absence of any visible wealth. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "You've got to be joking," Daniel said, his voice loud enough that nearby guests turned to watch. "Security must be sleeping tonight. How did someone like you even get in here?" The simple man's expression didn't change. "I was invited. And that," he gestured to the small placard on the table that read "Reserved," "is my seat." Bianca finally turned, her face a mask of amused disbelief. "Your seat? Do you have any idea who we are? Do you know what we're worth? People like you don't sit at tables like this. Now run along before you embarrass yourself further." Daniel stood up, his chest puffed out, his finger pointed directly at the man's face. "Listen to me, you stupid fool. I don't know what kind of mistake got you through those doors, but this conversation is over. Go find whatever corner they put people like you in and stay there." The ballroom had gone quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. Phones came out. Everyone watched as this public humiliation unfolded, as this simple man stood there being torn apart by two people who clearly believed they owned the world. But here's what nobody expected. The man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't fight back. Instead, he looked Daniel directly in the eyes, held his gaze for 3 long seconds, and said in a voice that somehow carried through the entire silent ballroom, "Remember this moment." Then he turned and walked away. Not rushed. Not angry. Just calm. The crowd slowly returned to their conversations, but something felt different now. Something in the air had shifted. Because there was something in the way that man walked, something in the steadiness of his voice, something that didn't quite match the dismissal he'd just received. And as he stepped through the ballroom doors into the cool evening air, his phone began to ring. Sit back and enjoy this powerful story. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Outside the ballroom, away from the glittering lights and poisonous laughter, the man stood on the marble steps leading to the garden. The night air was cool against his skin. He pulled out his phone as it vibrated in his pocket. The screen lit up his face in the darkness. "Mr. Cole," the voice on the other end said, professional and urgent. "The couple you're considering for the investment, the Lawsons, they've just arrived at the gala. Should we proceed with the presentation when you return? They're very eager to meet you." Samuel Cole, because that was his name, looked back at the ballroom doors. Through the glass he could just make out table 7. He could see Bianca laughing, Daniel raising his glass in a toast, both of them completely unaware of what was coming. "Yes," Samuel said quietly. "We'll proceed as planned. I'll be back inside in 10 minutes. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, remembering a time when he had nothing, remembering the people who helped him when he was down, remembering his grandmother's words that still echoed in his mind even though she'd been gone for 5 years. His phone buzzed again. A text from his assistant. "They're asking about you. Very excited. Keep saying how this investment will change everything for them." Samuel typed back, "I'm sure it will." He slipped the phone back into his pocket, straightened his simple waistcoat, and walked back toward the ballroom. Inside, the party continued. Unaware that the evening's entire trajectory was about to change in ways nobody could predict. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your story. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Samuel Cole really was. 23 years ago, Samuel was 9 years old, living in a small neighborhood on the east side of the city. His parents had died in a car accident when he was 6. His grandmother, Martha, took him in. She worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses during the day, working at a diner in the evenings, and doing laundry for wealthy families on weekends. Their apartment was tiny, but it was clean, safe, and filled with something money couldn't buy: wisdom. Martha would come home exhausted, her hands raw from cleaning products, her feet aching from standing all day. But she would sit with Samuel at their small kitchen table, help him with homework, teach him about life. "Baby," she would say, her voice soft but firm. People will judge you by what you wear, by where you live, by how much money you have. But true character? That's invisible. That's in here. She would tap his chest right over his heart. Never forget that the richest man in the world is poor if he has no respect for others. Samuel remembered those words every single day. He remembered them when he was 14, working his first job washing dishes. He remembered them when he was 19, sleeping in his car while trying to start his first business. He remembered them when that business failed spectacularly, leaving him $40,000 in debt. And he remembered them when he was 27, when his second business, an investment consulting firm, finally started to succeed. Not because of luck, not because of connections, but because Samuel Cole had learned something most people never figure out. People remember how you make them feel. He treated the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. He listened to the receptionist with the same attention as the board member. He dressed simply, lived modestly, and invested wisely. By the time he was 35, Samuel's investment group was worth several $100 million. But you'd never know it by looking at him. Because for Samuel, wealth was never about showing off. It was about having the freedom to help others build their dreams. And that's exactly what brought him to this gala tonight, to meet a couple who'd pitched him an interesting business proposal 3 weeks ago. A couple named Daniel and Bianca Lawson. If you've learned something valuable already, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people with these stories. Across the ballroom, Daniel and Bianca Lawson were in their element. This was their stage, their moment, their time to shine. Daniel owned a tech startup that had been making decent money for the past 2 years. Nothing extraordinary, but enough to fund the lifestyle he'd always dreamed of. The expensive suits, the luxury car, the penthouse apartment with views of the city skyline. Bianca, his wife of 3 years, had grown up wealthy and expected nothing less. Together they made a formidable pair. Beautiful, confident, successful, and absolutely, completely convinced of their own superiority. Champagne, Bianca snapped at a passing waiter, not even looking at him. The good stuff, not whatever cheap garbage you've been serving. The waiter, a young man probably working his way through college, nodded quickly and hurried away. Daniel laughed. "You're terrible," he said, but there was admiration in his voice, not criticism. Their business proposal was simple but ambitious. They wanted to expand Daniel's tech company internationally, and they needed a major investment to make it happen. After weeks of research and networking, they'd managed to secure a meeting with one of the most respected investors in the city, Samuel Cole. Neither of them had ever met him. His company kept a low profile. There were barely any photos of him online. But his reputation was legendary. Companies he invested in either soared to incredible heights or received nothing at all. "When do we meet this Cole guy?" Bianca asked, scanning the crowd. "Soon," Daniel said, checking his watch, a platinum piece that cost more than most people's cars. "He's supposed to be here tonight. Apparently he likes to observe potential investments at events like this. See how they handle themselves in social situations." "Well, we're handling ourselves perfectly," Bianca said, raising her glass. A commotion near table 7 caught their attention. Some poorly dressed man was bothering people, claiming he had reserved seats. Security would handle it. People like that didn't belong here anyway. Daniel turned back to the crowd, working the room, shaking hands, making connections. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have guessed, was that his entire future had just walked out of the ballroom, insulted and dismissed. And that future was about to walk back in. Question for you. Have you ever underestimated someone and regretted it later? Let us know in the comments. 20 minutes later, Samuel Cole returned to the ballroom. He made his way through the crowd, politely excusing himself when he needed to pass someone, nodding respectfully at familiar faces. He approached table 7 quietly, where Daniel and Bianca were still sitting, now completely comfortable. "You again," Bianca said, her voice sharp. "I thought we made ourselves clear. This table isn't for you." Daniel turned, recognition lighting his eyes. "Are you serious right now? Do we need to call security?" Samuel remained calm. "This table is reserved. Reserved for me. There's a placard right here." He pointed to the small sign that clearly read, "Reserved Cole." Daniel glanced at it, then back at Samuel, then laughed. Oh, this is rich. You think because there's a name on a card that it means anything? Someone probably put this here as a joke. That's when one of the gala organizers approached the table. She looked at Samuel, then at Daniel and Bianca. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice respectful. I'm so sorry for the confusion. Your presentation begins in 15 minutes. Would you like us to have your table cleared? The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. For 3 long seconds nobody moved. Bianca's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Daniel's hand slowly lowered. The organizer continued, completely unaware. We have your materials ready, Mr. Cole. The Lawsons are very eager to meet you. They've been asking about you all evening. Samuel nodded politely. Thank you, Jennifer. I'll head backstage in a few minutes. He turned back to Daniel and Bianca. The table is yours. Keep it. I won't be needing it anymore. He walked away, his simple shoes making soft sounds against the marble floor. Daniel and Bianca sat frozen. The realization was dawning slowly. Did she just say? Bianca's voice trailed off. Mr. Cole, Daniel finished, his face going pale. The simple man they'd insulted. The man they'd called poor. The man they'd tried to have removed. That man was Samuel Cole. The investor they needed. The man who held their future in his hands. Bianca's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the white tablecloth. Daniel stood up so fast his chair fell backward. From across the ballroom, they watched Samuel disappear through the backstage doors, taking their dreams with him. The ballroom lights dimmed. The evening's main event was about to begin. The host stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight for our annual celebration of innovation and entrepreneurship. We're particularly honored to have with us one of the most respected investors in the country, a man known not for flashy deals or public spectacles, but for his quiet wisdom, his incredible instinct for promising ventures, and most importantly, his unwavering integrity. Bianca grabbed Daniel's arm so hard her nails dug into his expensive suit jacket. This is it, she whispered. We can still fix this. We can apologize. The host smiled warmly. This man started from nothing, built his empire through hard work, determination, and an unshakable belief in treating every person with dignity and respect, regardless of their status or wealth. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Samuel Cole. The curtain parted. Samuel walked onto the stage. Same simple white shirt. Same plain waistcoat. Same worn shoes. But under the stage lights, everything looked different. He moved with quiet confidence. His presence commanded the room in a way designer clothes never could. When his eyes found Daniel and Bianca standing near the front, their faces stricken with horror, he paused. Just for a moment. Just long enough for them to know he'd seen them. Then he began to speak. Good evening. I want to tell you a story. When I was 9 years old, my grandmother took me to a fancy restaurant. It was my birthday and she'd saved money for months. But the waiter looked at us like we were trash that had blown in from the street. He suggested we might be more comfortable at a different establishment. A cheaper establishment. Samuel paused. My grandmother didn't argue. She simply smiled, thanked him politely, and we left. Outside I was angry. But she held my hand and said something I've never forgotten. She said, Baby, people who judge you by your appearance don't understand true value. Don't waste your energy being angry at them. Instead, become someone who never makes others feel the way we felt tonight. Samuel's eyes found the couple again. I've built my career on that principle. I invest in people, not just products. I look for character, for integrity, for respect. Because a business might fail. Product might flop. But character? That tells me everything I need to know. The silence was absolute. Tonight, I came here to meet several potential investments. One in particular caught my attention. A tech company with international potential. On paper, the proposal was impressive. But I've learned something over the years. The most important meeting doesn't happen in a boardroom. It happens in moments when people don't know they're being evaluated. In how they treat a waiter. In how they speak to someone they think is beneath them. Samuel's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. Earlier tonight I was insulted, humiliated, told I didn't belong. That I wasn't important enough. I don't share this for sympathy. I share this because it reveals something crucial. Character isn't what we show when we're trying to impress someone. It's what we show when we think nobody important is watching. He closed the folder in front of him, the one containing the Lawsons' business proposal. And that is why I believe the most important investment we can make is not in companies, but in the kind of people we choose to become. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. As Samuel walked off stage, he passed within feet of Daniel and Bianca. Neither could move. Neither could speak. They just stood there, destroyed as their entire future crumbled. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that subscribe button. The moment Samuel left the stage, Daniel and Bianca moved. They found him in the marble hallway outside the ballroom. "Mr. Cole." Daniel's voice echoed off the high ceilings. Samuel turned, his expression neutral. "Mr. Cole, please, we had no idea. It was a terrible mistake, we didn't recognize. If we'd known who you were." Samuel raised his hand. "You didn't know who I was. That's the problem. We can explain," Bianca said, tears streaming down her face. "We were stressed, we were nervous about meeting you." "You were thinking very clearly," Samuel interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "You saw someone you believed was beneath you, and you treated them accordingly. The only thing that's changed is that you now know that person has power over something you want." Daniel dropped to one knee. "Please, Mr. Cole. Our company, everything we've built, it all depends on this investment. We'll do anything." Samuel looked down at this man who'd called him a fool less than an hour ago. "Stand up." Daniel obeyed, hope lighting his eyes. "I invest in people, Mr. Lawson. Not products. Not business plans. People. Because character determines success far more than any strategy ever could. And tonight you showed me exactly who you are. Both of you." "But we can change," Bianca pleaded. "Perhaps you can," Samuel agreed. "I genuinely hope you do. But I won't be the one to fund that journey. My investments go to people who already understand the value of respect." He picked up his coat. "Your business proposal was excellent. The numbers were sound. Your vision was clear. But none of that matters if the people behind it don't have the character to sustain it." Daniel's face crumpled. "You're destroying us." "No," Samuel said firmly but not unkindly. "You destroyed yourselves. Tonight, at that table, when you chose cruelty over kindness. I'm simply choosing not to reward that choice." He turned to leave, then paused. "My grandmother used to say that respect is the only suit that never goes out of fashion. I'd remember that. Because the next investor you meet might not be as forgiving as I am." And with that, Samuel Cole walked away, leaving behind two people who just learned the most expensive lesson of their lives. Tell us in the comments. Did Samuel make the right choice? 3 days after the gala, the first article appeared online. Tech startup loses major investment opportunity. In the tight-knit world of high-stakes investment, word traveled fast. By the end of the week, 3 other potential investors had quietly withdrawn their interest. If Samuel Cole had passed on an investment after meeting the founders personally, there had to be a reason. 2 weeks later, Daniel had to let go of 5 employees. The expensive office space became too costly. 1 month later, their major client dropped them, taking 40% of their revenue. At home, Daniel and Bianca fought constantly, each blaming the other. Each replaying that night, wondering what would have happened if they'd just been kind, just been respectful, just been decent. "It was one mistake," Bianca would say. "One terrible mistake, and our entire lives are falling apart." But deep down, they both knew it wasn't really one mistake. It was a pattern, a way of thinking, a fundamental belief that some people mattered more than others. The gala had simply been the moment when that belief finally cost them everything. 6 weeks later, they'd lost the penthouse and moved to something more affordable. Daniel sat staring at Samuel Cole's website. At the top, a quote, "We invest in character first, business second. Because the right people build the right companies." Daniel closed the laptop and put his head in his hands. Somewhere across the city, Samuel was meeting with another entrepreneur, a young woman who'd grown up in foster care and built a small educational technology company. She wore a simple dress from a thrift store. She was nervous, apologizing for not having fancier materials. Samuel smiled warmly, put her at ease, asked her about her journey, her vision, her values. By the end of the meeting, he'd agreed to invest $2 million. Not because her pitch was perfect, but because when she'd entered the building that morning, she'd held the door for the janitor and asked him about his day. Samuel had been watching. Character first, business second. Always. Let me tell you something about regret. It's not the loud, dramatic thing movies make it out to be. It's quiet. It's the thought that wakes you up at 3 in the morning. 6 months after the gala, Daniel and Bianca's company collapsed completely. They filed for bankruptcy. Daniel took a job managing another company's tech division. Bianca went back to her family, who gave her a position at the family business, but everyone knew it was charity. And every single day both of them thought about that night. About the simple man standing beside their table. About the cruel words they'd spoken. The worst part? They'd actually learned the lesson. Too late, but they'd learned it. Bianca started volunteering at a youth center. Daniel went to therapy, worked on his anger, his need to prove himself. They became better people. Genuinely better. But the opportunity they'd lost was gone forever. That's the thing about consequences. Sometimes you can learn the lesson and still pay the price. Sometimes I'm sorry isn't enough. Meanwhile, Samuel Cole continued his work. He invested in dozens of companies. Most succeeded beyond expectations. He never spoke publicly about the gala incident. He didn't need to, because the real lesson wasn't about him at all. It was about every person who'd ever been judged, dismissed, or disrespected based on their appearance. It was about understanding that everyone carries a universe of experience and potential that you can't see from the outside. And the moment you forget that, the moment you let arrogance blind you to someone's humanity, you risk losing something far more valuable than an investment. You risk losing your own character. So here's my question for you. What would you have done? If you were Samuel, standing there being insulted, would you have walked away as calmly? And more importantly, have you ever been the Lawsons? Have you ever judged someone based on their appearance? We all have, if we're being honest. Maybe not as dramatically, but in small ways. In dismissive words. In impatient gestures. In the simple act of not seeing someone as fully human. This story isn't really about an investment or a business deal. It's about the basic human need to be treated with dignity. To be seen. To matter. Do you think the Lawsons deserved what happened to them? Or was the punishment too harsh? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And think about this. When was the last time you went out of your way to be kind to someone who couldn't benefit you in any way? Those moments matter more than we realize. Because character isn't built in the big moments. It's built in the small ones. In how we treat people when nobody's keeping score. Before you go, I want you to do something. Think of one person you encounter regularly who you might have overlooked. The person who cleans your office. The barista who makes your coffee. Tomorrow, look them in the eye. Learn their name. Say thank you and mean it. Treat them like they matter. Because they do. If you think this twist was shocking, wait until you see what we have coming next. A story about a homeless man who saves a businessman's life. And what happens when that businessman discovers who the homeless man used to be. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, treat people well. You never know when you might be standing in front of the person who could change your life. Or when you might be that person for someone else. Remember, respect is the only suit that never goes out of fashion. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.